There was 37 different streaming services channels needed to watch the 302 games that happened over a Friday, Saturday, and Sunday across the 5 major leagues. And that's unacceptable, ultimately, because being a consumer, even if you pay for all those different streaming services, you're typically not going to get any value out of them.
Hey, this is Jesse here, and you're about to hear my discussion with Tony from Bet Caddy, which is the ultimate sports remote. In this one, Tony breaks down his thoughts on the growing fragmentation of live sports consumption, why he thinks Bet Caddy is well positioned to solve the consumer streaming problem, the content strategy that resulted in 25 million organic impressions, overcoming the challenges of building innovative technology as a non-technical founder, and why he thinks he's in the right place at the right time with the Bet Caddy opportunity. I really enjoyed this discussion with Tony, and I hope you enjoy it as much as I did. The Betting Startups podcast is presented by Optimove, the creator of positionless marketing and the #1 player engagement platform. Positionless marketing gives every marketer the power to execute any marketing task instantly and independently, and Optimove Ignite Plus is its program to support early-stage iGaming startups. If you're attending G2E in Las Vegas this October, you can find Optimove at stand number 2630 and tell them that Betting Startups sent you to receive your first month free. All right, we are back here on the Betting Startups podcast. We're now on the other side of the second week of the new NFL season. And joining me, I have Tony Ryan from Chicago, who, don't know, Tony, if you're ready to talk about the Bears start yet. We could talk baseball as well. I don't know if you're a White Sox fan, but maybe there's another topic you want to discuss. But all that aside, welcome to the podcast. How is middle of September in Chicago for you, sports aside right now?
I mean, problem is that sports pretty much dominate how the rest of us had to get to the winter, and knowing it's going to be brutal and watching what the Chicago Bears have put on tape these last 2 weeks has made things a little bit tougher. But ultimately, we're focused on every other game just as much from the betting perspective. So anything that helps me not watch the Bears at this point, I'm there for. But yeah, otherwise doing pretty well.
Awesome, Tony. Look, let's just start at the beginning here. Give the audience a quick sense of who you are. Talk a bit about your background, some of the major chapters of your journey prior to starting Bet Caddy.
Absolutely. So I grew up here, born and raised in Chicago, sports family through and through. And I think I lost my first bet on a backdoor cover from Kyrie Irving hitting a half-court shot his rookie season, to give you a little bit of how long I've been in this game, for better or worse. But going back to days of handicapping the polo games with my grandpa in his kitchen, been a lifelong bettor, lifelong fantasy player, lifelong fan. And with that, that took me into University of Illinois, where I met my co-founder, and we're finally good. We were not good when I was there, but, seeing us ranked higher than Bama is something I never thought I'd see in my lifetime. Ultimately, it got into the advertising sense, was at Edelman, Google. We did a lot of the programmatic advertising, the consulting around that world, but always wanted to find my way into sports. Was even during my time at Google moonlighting at a sports betting themed bar here in Chicago called Over Under. You want to talk about market research, serve a few drinks there. You'll hear everything in between. And so ultimately, I'm always going to be a consumer first, CEO second. And I think that's where, a big kind of part of our process and how we look at things is tied to that, between me and my co-founder and our team in general. But ultimately, now today, co-founder and CEO of Bet Caddy, and gearing up to put it out there in the course of the next few days. So we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, big few days coming up for you guys. I'll come back to that in a hot minute here, Tony. But just sticking with the origins of it, fill in some gaps for us, right? I mean, you got the background at Google, working in the sports bar. You've been around it. You've been around sort of tech. But, making the leap into actually starting your own company is a different journey and trajectory altogether. Talk about what prompted you to start Bet Caddy, and give us a bit of a sense of, I guess, the origin story of Bet Caddy itself.
Yeah, it starts with a living room couch. But ultimately, my co-founder, Braden, and I, we were college roommates, and sitting at University of Illinois, we probably had 7 TVs going at any moment, right? Because every guy within our room would have their own TV, 1 or 2 of them. And so lining those up on a college football Saturday, watching every game we can get our hands on, all the way down to Hawaii, playing on the island at 11, right? It was just always trying to watch whatever we had to stake it. And working at bars, me and him both, I managed a bar in college, he worked at the other bar as a bartender. We were changing channels just as much as we were watching games, or serving drinks for that matter. And so when it came down to it, seeing that consumer sense and being in group chats with our consumer every day, hanging out with them on the weekends, sitting next to them at the bars. Ultimately, when you move back to the city, you might have 1 TV, maybe 2 if you're lucky, but most places, right, you're just watching those by yourself. And as the industry evolved, to incorporate streaming, which first started as an awesome element to the experience where you had different options to watch the games, it compounded as a frustration for me where I was sitting on the couch one day in 2023, had my phone in one hand checking box scores, had my remote in the other, had my Xbox controller next to me, switching on my both TVs that me and my roommate shared in the apartment, and just trying to watch what mattered to me. I was trying to watch Terry Rozier hit over 2.5 threes, but I didn't know when he was in and out of the game. I didn't know what guys were subbing, and all those things considered. Bet Caddy was born out of just pure frustration. Then I'm like, I pay for all this. I want to watch what my action is, right? Because every given night, whether it's a rebound or a catch or yards or whatever that might be, sports betting and fantasy sports have made it so that everything matters to someone. Whether they win or whether they lose, either way, they want to watch. And so ultimately, Bet Caddy spawned from me wanting to watch, my co-founder wanted to watch, and texting him one day. Next thing we know, we started working in my basement, and ultimately, right, we are here today. So it was a very much one day it wasn't, next day it was. And we've been working on it ever since.
Literally last night was talking to my wife over dinner, and we, like everybody, subscribe to a few different streaming services right now to access the content we want to watch. Like everybody, purely from a sports perspective, though, the rights are locked up by different platforms, meaning you have to subscribe to multiple platforms to get access to the different sports you want to watch, which takes me back to the dinner conversation last night. We're big hockey fans here in Canada, so we're like, we got the season starting soon. We got to resubscribe to our platform where we can get the NHL streaming service. In the meantime, I want to watch the MLB playoffs. That's on a different one. Obviously, NFL's just kicked off. That's the zone. So all of a sudden, I'm up to over $100 a month in subscription fees to these streaming platforms, when actually going back to the original cable model might actually make more sense. And I'm not ruling that out. But my question to you, Tony, as somebody who's building around streaming sports, what's your take right now, just at a high level, on the fragmentation of live sports and I guess, the consumer streaming problem, if you will?
Ultimately, comes down to exactly what you just said. You've seen Apple, Amazon, Google, all these different tech organizations that are buying up broadcast rights because they know it's guaranteed eyeballs. And when you have leagues, such as the NBA just did with their rights contract, right, they split it up from the TNT side to now go to Amazon as well as NBC and Peacock, where a Monday game is going to be on NBC, but a Tuesday game is going to be on Peacock. If you have Peacock, you can watch both. If you have NBC, you can't. And so I think there's this sentiment where it comes down to one weekend last November, there was 37 different streaming services channels needed to watch the 302 games that happened over a Friday, Saturday, and Sunday across the 5 major leagues. And that's unacceptable, ultimately, because being a consumer, even if you pay for all those different streaming services, you're typically not going to get any value out of them. And so for Bet Caddy, and our primary focus, right, is defragmenting sports. And when you see, right, everyone, we want to watch those particular moments that matter to us, but when it becomes so much more difficult than it used to be of hitting, last on the Comcast remote or on one of these remotes, that doesn't exist anymore. Flipping from Amazon Prime on a Thursday night to go over to a Max or a TBS or a TNT app because you can watch the games on all three for the playoffs. Well, yeah, that's not a great experience because it's a lot of missing that moment that could matter to you, whether it's from a fan perspective, a better perspective, or a fantasy perspective. And so ultimately what I think it boils down to is it started with the right intention, right, of making it easier to access sports across different devices. But ultimately, when you are asking the consumer to now purchase more and more of these streaming services, they're not going to, because they're not going to find any value out of them, specifically when there's alternative means, which I know we'll talk a little bit about, to watch them, which a lot of young people do because they don't want to pay for it. And so I think ultimately it comes down to how do you create a better consumer experience and how do you drive value to the people that just spent billions of dollars on the broadcast rights and show them that you're not there to take away traffic from them or to hurt their business anyway. We're here to help them. And that's where the primary focus of Bet Caddy is going to start with. But winning the consumer, right, getting them and making it a better experience for them is ultimately always going to be the main focus.
Well, let's zoom in on Bet Caddy now, Tony, and talk a little bit about what it is you guys have built. Give the audience, just to start with here, your best elevator pitch, high concept overview. What is it? What's the value proposition? And as it relates to this problem that we've now been talking about for a few minutes as it relates to streaming, how is Bet Caddy solving that?
Definitely. So first off, just imagine, right, you're sitting on the couch, well, it could be any day of the week, and you might have some college football action. You might have some MLB action, some NBA, some college basketball, NFL, whatever it is. That action that night, right? You get home, you put away your work laptop for that day, and you just got one thing to do, watch sports. Well, because of that, every different element of that game, depending on what you bet on that night or who's on your fantasy team, is going to change what you want to watch. And sports can change on a dime. So you ultimately want to watch what's most exciting to you. And so with that being particular case, what Bet Caddy built was a system that will give you that NFL red zone style viewing experience, but every other day of the year, right? Scott's only here for 18 days out of the year. I love him. Not trying to come after the throne. Ultimately, what it comes down to is on a college football Saturday or on an NBA Tuesday night, there might be 10 games and you want to bounce between them. Well, Bet Caddy turns into the ultimate sports remote for you. We have a scoreboard view that for anyone can use where they can go in, set up the streaming services that they own, and then airplay their phone to their television. Every time they tap on one of the games, it will change the channel on their TV to that specific game. When it comes down to the actual notifications of the when to watch, we have a system that takes advantage of the latency that happens right between the, what happens on the court or the field and when you actually see it on your television. Could be anywhere from 15 to 45 seconds. Well, what we do is we get the data from right when it's on the field, and we ultimately notify you with a notification like Aaron Judge is coming up to bat. And so by the time you actually click on said notification, it will open up the corresponding game stream, and then you get to watch right as he walks up to the plate. So it ultimately takes in your stakes, and then we'll personalize the sports watching experience to them. Every given night, regardless of what you have, we got that link within the platform for every game.
So for me as a consumer using Bet Caddy, Tony, do I need to have a subscription then to the underlying services to get access to these streams through your app? Talk to us a bit about the access to the streams and how you facilitate that.
Correct. Yeah. So we're ultimately trying to promote, the good way of streaming. And what it comes down to is it's not just, hey, what channel is this game on anymore? It's also the fact that you can watch it 7 different ways. You take an NFL game, for example, that's on Fox this past weekend. Well, you can watch it on the Fox app, right? You can watch it on maybe Xfinity Stream or AT&T Uverse, or if you have NFL Sunday Ticket, you could watch it like that. NFL Plus, if it's the game that's locally marketed to you. So that's just one example of 5 different ways you can watch the exact same thing. And so what it comes down to is there might be users that actually have access to specific games that they don't know because they have so many subscriptions and so many different things. Or there might be a way for them to consolidate, and say, hey, I just need this, this, and this to watch the things that I want to watch. Well, ultimately for us, it's, hey, can we make those streaming services that you already own more valuable to you? If I'm watching Peacock, I'm not getting any value out of my Max or my NBA League Pass, right? Well, if you're getting that notification that says, hey, you got LeBron James to score 25 points, he's got 20, there's 5 minutes left. Well, now you can tap and watch that, that highlight that's personalized to you and be engaged with that, but not necessarily have to sit there and watch the full game. So ultimately, yes, you do need to own the streaming services from a consumer sense, but a lot of people do. I think it's about 30% of sports fans, the 18 to 34-year-old demographic own 3 or more. And so for us, it's, can we start giving you more value out of one of those services, then 2, then 3, then 4, and ultimately cater that experience so they become more valuable and have you watching more, which is ultimately going to make the people that we want to partner with at the leagues, teams, and rights holders' offices happy. And so it's just creating a better experience for the consumer, but ultimately affecting the industry as a whole.
And you mentioned a few minutes ago the alternate means of watching streams online that maybe circumvent, let's say, subscription-based services. I mean, notably last week, Stream East, which is a popular streaming platform, was shut down, though, maybe has been respawned since. Nevertheless, what's your sort of take on that part of the ecosystem, and specifically with Bet Caddy? What are sort of the rules of the playground? Are you going to be facilitating alternate methods of viewing games? Is it subscription-based services only? Give us a sense of kind of how that side of it fits into this, if at all.
I think it tells a massive story about where the compound effects of fragmentation are coming from. There's that picture out there of LeBron James on Stream East. It's like, if he's not willing to pay for it, then I don't know who is, right? But what I think it's a bigger issue as a whole is that I was told, hey, young people are watching less sports than ever. I don't believe that, because we're betting more than ever. And you know what you want to do when you bet on something? You want to watch it. And so when I see things like that happening, where Bleacher Report and New York Times and other places are saying Stream East is gone, it's been seized, and then an hour later it's back up and running, which I've seen now 2 years in a row happen, it ultimately comes down and tells you one thing: they can't stop that. And even if they could stop one, there's about 100 more that can go take its place. And so when you have consumers that are constantly flocking to these sites, I think the number they said was 1.6 billion visits to Stream East in a year. Well, it tells you one thing: your most engaged consumers, the people that watch the most sports, are not the ones watching it through League Pass. They're the guys that are watching it on those websites. Those are your most engaged fans. If you go to the comment section of those websites, what do you think that they're talking about? They're bets. And so what I think it comes down to is, I look at Spotify as a good example. Now, we are not Spotify. Bet Caddy is not. I'm not pretending we are. We're not at that level. But how do they stop the piracy of music? that was a huge thing when I was growing up. I remember the LimeWire, Pirate Bay, LiveMixtapes.com era. Like we all do, right? Well, we didn't want to pay 99 cents for a song. And ultimately Spotify came out and they curbed it almost overnight because they just simply made something better. And so when I think it comes down to for Bet Caddy, it's how do you bring that person that's on those sites 3-4 days a week watching 5 or 6 games, how do you bring them back over to the legitimate meets? And I think it's about creating something better, a superior consumer viewing experience that's personalized to what you care about any given night, because it actually offers a true differentiating factor. And when they show that Spotify was, it's taken down, it's gone, and then it's right back up and running, well, it tells me one thing. There's no solution to stopping them. So ultimately, I think the way to do it is to get that consumer a better overall experience. And that's what we're working towards every single day, is by creating that spread zone, as we call it, dynamic, and bridging ourselves to the television and be able to cater that experience every given night to every given fan, sports bettor, and fantasy player. And so that's where the overall mission comes from. We got to start somewhere, which is why we're starting with the consumer app. But ultimately, our goal is to get to the television. We'll see how fast we can do so. But it's heavily dependent, obviously, on how the next few weeks go and bridging that gap to the TV.
You guys launched the initial version of the Bet Caddy product this past spring around March Madness. I think you guys, brought on around 1,000 people, as I understand it, to get feedback, obviously test it out, et cetera, et cetera. How did that initial launch go back in the spring, Tony? And I guess as importantly, what were some of the learnings from that launch that you maybe addressed over the last few months that have now culminated in your, about to launch football product here later this week?
Yeah, I would say primarily, it's obviously a scary thing launching a product, and it's a scary thing launching it when every single brand out there is trying to A, get you to download their app, or B, is talking about March Madness. It's a lot of noise to cut through. But in particular, I was very proud of what we were able to accomplish and build on a short-term notice. We were a web-based platform that we used a lot for research elements and understanding our consumer base, how they were going to utilize the platform back in 2024. And in 2025, we ultimately, started here, pivoted, and we're like, we want to get ready for March Madness and the NBA playoffs. And so that first week when we put it out there, it was not the finished or polished product. It was a very strong version of it, we thought, but it ultimately lacked the one thing that was a core functionality, which was the notification side. And having people come into it and putting it out there initially, when we saw hey, half the people that downloaded it the first week came back in April, that was a really strong signal to us. But ultimately it was, without the notifications, do I have to go back in and kind of upload my bets every single day? Is it better than what I'm currently used to? And I think it was a very powerful lesson that was a harsh but true one that we had to learn, which is, I was an Action Network user for 10 plus years. My friends, they use the Score. They use, all the different apps that are out there. There's a million places you can check scores now. And so for what I think about it is we have to break that habit. And we have to be better, whether it's in one area or every area, We have to be better and do something different. And ultimately, what we learned from March Madness was, just having the links to the games that we're on, that wasn't enough for us at that current moment. And we went back to the drawing board, We were like, hey, we know that we need the notification element to really have this factor go through. And so over the course of the summer, we brought on a new team here that's in Chicago that helped us from the technology perspective, and added on, the layer of at-bat notifications for the MLB. And let me tell you, when I clicked on Shohei Ohtani and I had him to go yard, and I watch as it pulls up the game stream and he sends a ball 440 feet to right center, I almost cried. I almost did. I'm not even kidding. It was a beautiful moment because it was that level where I'm like, that's it. And putting it out to an initial test group, bringing some of the people back in that came from that initial beta back in March and showing them that, and they went, wow, this is what you guys need to do, Taking that and really capturing it and building on top of it for the other sports is the next step. So we're really excited, and obviously with football, being here and spending the last few weeks after we got baseball out, getting football ready to go. But we'll be officially putting that out with Red Zone notifications for both college and the NFL. You get a Red Zone notification that my Illini are in the Red Zone. You tap on it, and it's going to open up that corresponding game stream in a matter of seconds for you, so you get to watch that that drive. And so that's the element I think we learn from most, which is take what you have. It could be good in some areas, but really hone in and focus on what's most important to the user, and what's most important is to watch that exciting moment. And I think that's going to be reflected in the new platform and ultimately beyond as we continue to incorporate week over week, improving the thing.
As you mentioned, you're launching Bet Caddy as a consumer product. Obviously, any consumer mobile app is very challenging to attract a critical mass of users to here in 2025, especially in a category as competitive as sports and betting and fantasy. You built an audience of 20,000 people in 6 months through creating unique content. I think you were out there running around with your iPhone and a tripod and resulted in over 25 million organic impressions. So talk a bit about how you were able to achieve that, and maybe, from what you've seen so far, how well do you see that attention you're generating through the content converting into engagement with Bet Caddy?
Yeah, it was a funny thing how that all started, but I've had a couple videos go pretty nuclear in terms of social, just from content that I just came up with the idea. We had like 100 square foot office, I think. At one point, me and my co-founder, we sat right next to each other every day. And, Fridays rolled around and we, spitballing ideas, right? We're keeping it loose on a Friday. And I had this idea where after I talked to a few founders and they told me, hey, listen, you got to establish an audience at a baseline. You just can't just plop this thing out there and hope people come, right? You got to build up that presence through any way of a wait list or social following, whatever that might be. And I first started trying to do with picks, right? And the thing is, I don't necessarily love to do that because one day people love you, the next day they hate you, and it just depends on when they actually see the content. And so I started with that, but I'm like, I don't think that's that interesting. I had the idea of historical bad beats that we started spitballing in the office where, what if you had Goliath as the last leg of your parlay? And I made this, I got really good with video tools and Photoshop and other things while waiting for the product to be done, just in terms of build that marketing funnel. And I Photoshopped the DraftKings bet slip. I, made the background look like historical Coliseum. I took my hoodie I was wearing and slapped it over and made it look like a sash. And I shot the video. And I took some Joe Rogan commentary and put it in the background. And I made it. I sent it to my group chat and I said, is this funny? And no one responded. And I was like, all right, well, I think it's funny, and I didn't hear back. And so I just said, I'm going to put it out. So I put it out, just put it on TikTok. I go to a wedding. I look down about 3 hours later and it's at 10,000 likes or like 100,000 views. And I was mind blown, right? I'm like, maybe I have something here. And then the next day, I went back and I had 20,000 and I drove to my office and I just brought a thing of college costumes I had to go shoot some other videos. And I shot one for the Wright brothers. And I looked down and that's at 100,000 views within a couple hours. And I'm like, okay, I think we have something here. But I did run out of historical context, so I did have to pivot to other means. But seeing us got posted on DraftKings and be posted by Pickett and be posted by Barstool and Bleacher Report betting and seeing my face up there ultimately gave me the idea of hey, content can be a powerful tool. But I wasn't just doing that to ask people to download an app, right? It was more so doing it to just show the audience I get it, right? I'm with you guys there too. And ultimately that build up has led to a lot of opportunities, whether it's through just hey, someone goes to the page and they see it and then they think it's a little bit more interesting from having a nice size following, or being able to go use that content to potentially broker a partnership elsewhere, or we've seen some success from an influencer perspective, other things in between. But I think incorporating, it's really difficult, as you said, to cut through the noise, especially in this industry. And we don't have the giant budget to throw at paid ads. And so I think using comedy as an ability to facilitate attention, but ultimately at the end paid off with some sort of product dynamic is where we're going for. And I think that the campaign that we have coming up is going to be one that people very much enjoyed in terms of how we blend those two sectors together. So yeah, it's going to be a huge avenue for us in terms of our user acquisition means. And obviously we can go partner with our friends that are handicappers and other influencers. But I think it's really important to also have your own brand voice. And that's something that I take a lot of pride in trying to establish alongside having great technology.
I know it's early days for you. You're probably not thinking too much about monetization yet. It's been all eyes on the product and just getting live and all of that good stuff. But, caveat, it is early days. How are you thinking about the business model here and ultimately monetizing the attention that you're getting in the app, the engagement? What are some of the things you're thinking about in terms of how you'll make $1 here with the Bet Caddy business?
Oh, I think about it quite too often. But what it comes down to is, we do have to ask people to pay for the streaming services, right? And that is, I pay for this and I got to pay for this now too. And ultimately I can understand the pushback of that. I'm a consumer too. So I paid for picks. I paid for other things in between, right? You got to have value out of it. And so I think for us, it's about you establish value or you give value and the money comes secondary. And so ultimately the first step for us is this value, right? Put it out to the audience and really try to strum it up and bring people within the platform and see how they use it, how that functionality is treating them. And then ultimately, if there's an area they really like, just like we saw with notifications, can we expand upon that? And we've written 100 different notification types that we want to send that are down to outs recorded or pitch counts or anything in between across all different betting verticals, depending on the sports. And so ultimately for us, it's hey, let's start by making a great consumer platform and then see if there's other ways that we could introduce elements to monetize. Obviously, the sportsbook affiliate side, you're seeing the industry shift from acquisition to retention. Can we help retain? Well, absolutely, right? Because we're going to be able to, anyone can take a screenshot of any bet from anywhere, upload it, and we could parse that, right, and turn it into a bet slip, essentially, that they could track and watch their games through. But what comes down to is, we're absorbing that information, but ultimately want to use it to help the users get better boosts, better odds, right, better promotions that are more catered to their individual betting habits. And so that's a way that I think is a user-friendly way where they're going to say, hey, I'm going to get more value out of my sports books. And from our side, right, can obviously help the sports books better find, right, and retain their customers. So that's an element, obviously, from a data perspective that we're looking at. But the secondary side is the streaming, right? If this person has ESPN Plus, it says watch. If they don't, it says get. And ultimately point them towards an ability to have a better experience and have more value outside of that app. And so those are the two avenues that we're going to immediately focus on is, right, work with sportsbooks. We have a few partners there and working with streaming services who we want to extend an olive branch to by saying, hey, we sent your viewers. All right, now that we have, let's have a conversation about affiliates. But what it comes down to is from there, taking it a step further to the premium side. And so we have a lot of ideas in terms of what we consider to be premium features, but we're not going to charge for it unless we feel like it's something that is worth every penny. And we want to make sure that we build the trust of our audience first. And if that means eating ice cubes for dinner a few more nights for a few more months, then we'll do so. But it comes down to making a great user experience first, and everything else comes secondary to that.
All right, let's shift and talk about the funding side of all of this, Tony. Give us a sense of how you've been able to basically capitalize and finance the project to date. Have you raised any money so far? Give us a sense of what the cap table looks like as of right now.
Yeah, we raised a couple bucks. What it came down to is I'm not technical. And so ultimately, my co-founder has become much more technical over the years and leads product. We are not guys that unfortunately cannot sit down and just code, because I wish we could. But what it comes down to is, we had to find the right partners along the way, find the right personnel and the right people that could help take the vision from what was in our heads and bring it to life. And so, it took cash. It takes a little bit of oxygen to keep the business breathing. And so we went through and raised from friends and family. We brought on Pat Spencer from the Golden State Warriors as our first athlete investor, and bringing him on has been godsend. He's been incredible since day one, stepping in here, taking a larger role than you might see from a traditional just investor that's writing the check. And for us right now, we're heading into those bigger conversations. The goal is to get the fuel we need to start really capturing that user experience through and through, and ultimately bridge our way to the television. But in the meantime, obviously, it's the chicken and egg problem, right? You need money to build the product, you need product to get money. So I think we've been able to bridge and find our way through. Definitely some dark days along the way, but ultimately, we have a slew of investors that, whether they're friends, family, or they're partners or operators, they've helped us get to this point, and we're really proud of where we've gotten. So obviously more to come, but building our own internal team is the next step here, and we feel like we have some candidates that are great for it. Just obviously, you've seen the price of paper towels. They ain't cheap anymore. So it's just making sure that we have enough fuel in the fire to keep this going and get the product where it needs to be.
Right on. And you just mentioned the fact that both yourself and your co-founder are both non-technical. I mean, you understand now what it takes to build an app, of course, but to your point, you can't sit down there in front of a command line interface and start coding the app yourself. Talk a bit about that, Tony, insofar as that journey for you guys as non-technical founders, building what is essentially a tech-enabled product with a bit of complexity, right? I mean, you ostensibly have integrations with these streaming platforms. You mentioned earlier the whole latency discussion and issue that needs to be overcome from a technical perspective. There's layers to this thing, right? But for you guys as non-technical co-founders, I'm sure a lot of this was scary. Just talk through what that journey's been like and maybe some of the struggles, I guess, you've encountered as a reality.
Yeah, it ain't fun. I'll tell you that much. It's pretty easy to put that on the note, but it is possible. There's been companies out there that were started by people that necessarily didn't have the talents to sit down and build it. And I know obviously you have a unique advantage if you have that, and a lot of companies do. But unfortunately for us, it was very important to find the right people, and we had to go through the process and all the trials and tribulations that come with it. Right? I used to get up at 4 o'clock in the morning and teach a guy from Nigeria. Shout out my boy Gabriel. He was a great guy. He really tried, but he didn't understand baseball at all, right? And we would get up every morning, kind of talk through the rules. When I'm explaining sack flies and chicks like parlays, it's probably not the best person to be working with. Yeah, we tried our best though. And ultimately through that process where I designed the first version of the platform on UIZard and made things in, and I didn't know what mobile optimization meant at first. For the first month we were doing this. And so seeing it where someone pulled it up on their phone and it looked terrible, it's like, oh man, yeah, that's not a good start. But ultimately that forced us, right, to get creative in other areas in the business that we could advance it, right? Whether that be through our content, as an example, or through, right, going to participate in pitch competitions and other avenues that forced us into it. But we also learned so much from a technical sense, where my co-founder taught himself the Sport Radar API inside and out, and ultimately has now mastered that, where we both started at essentially square one from day one. He had a data and analytics background, but having to learn these things where we went through and tried out all the different links that to make sure that we could open up these apps automatically on the user's side on their phone. And that was a process that we had to iterate on, or working with designers or learning Figma and all these things ourselves. And so I think it's obviously, you look back on it and you're like, hey, yeah, I wish we kind of found that right person at the right time to help accelerate the platform. But because we didn't, I ultimately think it made us so much better, because it allowed us to really hone in and focus on the user experience and have conversations, because they were so much more meaningful when you knew that you only had maybe 1 or 2 shots to get that thing right. It led us to understand that, hey, you can't just put something out there that's okay in this element. We really have to focus on what makes this great. And knowing that notification system was so important, and seeing on a web-based platform that some people weren't willing to open up their laptops to get the notifications, we had to pivot to a mobile app. Taking that all in, I think it just adds a layer of where you have those struggles, you get so much better in other areas. And so I would have recommended to anybody. I think finding the right technology partner can make your life so much easier, but it's about, wow, they're working, what are you doing? I think is the main focus, and how do you communicate with them to make sure that your vision is brought to life? And that's something that I feel like we've gotten very, very good at, and something that from day one, if you told me what it would look like 2 years ago to what it is now, I would have thought you were crazy. But ultimately, it's come to that point.
Right on, Tony. You mentioned that you guys are days away from launching football in the Bet Caddy app. What's the rest of the football season look like for Bet Caddy? And ultimately, when you get to the end of it, like, what does a successful season look like for you guys?
Yeah, there was a friend of mine. He is started a company recently, but he was an engineer at some of the larger sports books. And he gave me this little piece of wisdom once where he said, it's the tough part about building with sports data. You got to build in all the data, then you can build the, I don't know if I can swear on here, the stuff people want. But ultimately, what it comes down to is, you're baking the cake, you have to get all the data flown in, and then you put the icing on it. And so ultimately for us, what the next coming weeks look like, we want to be like an NFL team, right? Get better week over week. That's how we look at this and how we're going to view the product. And can we add one thing this week that makes it a better user experience, or makes it more sticky, or another layer, another element? And so for us, what a successful season looks like is, right, establishing the name and establishing that whenever you want to watch something, if you don't know where it's at, open up Bet Caddy. That's is success measured for us, right? Whether it's 1,000 people are using it or 10,000 people are using it on a daily basis, it's about, right, starting to craft that around our consumer. Where you have NBA and college basketball built, it's the other tough part about building sports. You finish them right as the season ends. So really excited, obviously, to have NFL and college football ready, and not at the tail end, but in the upfront. And so then it's just going to be enhancing the other layers of those features, right? Making it a better experience for uploading your bets and tracking them. Giving, right, alternative different streaming options, as I outlined earlier, with 5 different ways you can watch one game. Adding in advanced notification systems that are very hyper-personalized down to, right, what bet that you have that night. These are all things that we're going to be incorporating into the platform, and how we prioritize them in terms of what features come next will largely be a conversation with our users. But we're very much prepared over the course of the last 2 years to bring this thing to market and to enhance it on a week-over-week basis. And our goal is to obviously, right, be able to bring in the funds necessary to build it to where we want it to go and start finding our way towards the television. But for the time being, we'll settle for being the ultimate sports remote.
Well, you said it a few times now, so I think I know the answer, but I'm going to ask the question anyways, Tony. Extending the timeline out 5 years, in your wildest dreams, in 5 years' time, where's Bet Caddy then, and kind of where does it sit within the broader sports tech ecosystem?
As I talked about a little bit, when it comes down to that Spotify example, right? Our goal is ultimately, we're not going to stop it ever. I'm not pretending we're going to. But our goal is to help, right, be a silver bullet against it, right? From the streaming's perspective, and people are going to go to these sites. Well, how do you bring them back over? And I think ultimately it's about bringing that experience to the television. My goal is that people only have to hit one button when they want to watch sports at night. It's the power button. Because what it comes down to is creating that personalized, crafted experience, that spread zone experience where on every given night, every single fan gets to watch what they care about. And I think ultimately that will create more value for the end user, for the leagues, teams, and rights holders that are showing these games. I think that that's the experience that we're looking to build, within the next 5 years. And if there's a Bet Caddy smart TV app within that time frame, that is my dream, and that always has been. It's my co-founder shares that sentiment. So that's our goal, right? Is to get to the television within the next 5 years. But ultimately, I think that we have with the level of fragmentation that's on now and the consumers obviously being frustrated by it, I think the opportunity to shorten that window is right in front of us. And obviously hoping to take full advantage of this upcoming season to really show our value, show how many users we can drive, and show how many viewers that we can give to these leagues, teams, and rights holders we hope to work with. So the path is not going to be one that's crystal clear, as there's not many startups out there that have tried to work with the teams and leagues, but there are examples. And we've taken what we've learned from them and ultimately are trying to build out our own path.
All right, Tony, before I let you get out of here, we're going to hit you with a few rapid fire questions. So buckle in. Let's do this. Get out of bed in the morning. Check your phone. What's the first app you're opening up?
Depends on how late last night's game was, but if it was a late one, it might be a little bit of either Bet Caddy or DraftKings. We'll see. It just depends. But most of the time it's that, and as of recent, it's been a little bit more Gmail and Slack, unfortunately. But we'll get back to it.
All right. If you're out at the karaoke lounge later, what song are you singing?
Real Slim Shady, Eminem. It's more rapping, but go with that one.
All right, let's go. Final one for you here. If you could be anybody for a day, one day only, dead or alive, who would that be?
Alexander the Great.
Nice one, Tony. For people listening, can you quickly plug where they can check out Bet Caddy and or get in touch with you to ask about anything that might have piqued their interest with everything you've shared today? What's the best way for people to check out both the product and get in touch with you?
Absolutely. So you can go to @BetCaddyTV is going to be where our primary socials are. And obviously you can reach out through there or go to our website, betcaddy.tv. That'd probably be the best way to get in touch with us. And in terms of the app, we'll be releasing, I'm not sure when this is dropping, but we will be releasing the NFL and college football updates into Bet Caddy as part of an official launch in the coming weeks here, knock on wood.
Well, I hope you didn't just jinx yourself there, Tony. But this has been a lot of fun. Really appreciate you joining the pod today. I know it's a busy time and a hectic time for you and the team. So wishing you guys a lot of luck getting the football product live and obviously a huge NFL season ahead. All the best to you.
You know what? Go Bears. Just kidding. They suck. But yeah, thanks for the time. Appreciate it.
The Betting Startups podcast is presented by Optimove, the creator of positionless marketing and the #1 player engagement platform. Positionless marketing gives every marketer the power to execute any marketing task instantly and independently, and Optimove Ignite Plus is its program to support early-stage iGaming startups. If you're attending G2E in Las Vegas this October, you can find Optimove at stand number 2630 and tell them that Betting Startups sent you to receive your first month free.